time for questions, and questions are to the Executive Office, and I call Liz Kimmins.
Question number 2, please.
First Minister.
And I note that question 1 was withdrawn, so just I'm sure that I know the House mentioned this earlier, but the member that was due to ask the question was stranded last night in an airport in England due to not having accessible services for him. So I'm sure everybody would want to send our best wishes to our colleague and to say that airlines and every other service needs to do better to support those people with additional needs. Turning then to question 2, we're very pleased to say that following the executive approval of Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategic framework and the first delivery plan earlier this month, that launch of this important framework took place on Monday the 16th of September. This is a 2-year delivery plan in which we will develop campaigns and we will collaborate with many parts of government and society to drive transformative change. Vitally, we will support grassroots groups and the community and voluntary sector organisations through a change fund to do more, to build capacity and also to be better equipped to address the significant issue in their areas. Preparation continues at pace to bring forward the Change Fund, and we're also pleased to say that work is already ongoing in delivering a number of the actions within the delivery plan itself.
Ms Kimmins.
I thank the First Minister for her answer. Could the First Minister also outline then what preventative actions will be taken as a result of this framework and delivery plan to help end violence against women and girls?
First Minister.
Yeah, one of the 4 outcomes and the main focus of the framework is crucially about prevention, and this is where we are aiming to get to, where we create a society that's absolutely free from violence against women and girls, free from gender-based violence, free from abuse and harm. And I think that addressing that underlying cause is crucially important if we're going to be successful with our strategy. We have to stop the abuse before it even starts. So we want everyone to understand that violence against women and girls, to recognise it, to know what it is, to be able to see it very clearly when they do, and also how to take action to prevent it. Our ambition certainly goes beyond the near future, and our focus is, as I said, on that longer term prevention, on transforming our society for the better that will end violence against women and girls for the future generations.
Connie Egan.
First Minister, it was good to see everybody really welcoming the strategic framework for ending violence against girls that was published last week. I was just hoping if I could ask for some clarification around the £3 million figure that was cited in it. Is that to go solely to the Change Fund, or will that also be needed, for example, for the research and campaigns that were also included in the delivery plan?
Sir.
Yeah, thank you. So just we're going to say a lot more about the Change Fund in the coming weeks whenever we've actually settled on the final application process, etc. And we will certainly talk to the committee in relation to that. But you're right, £3 million been earmarked over the 2 years, so the first 2 years of the plan. And we intend to target that funding very keenly, I suppose, towards the Change Fund itself. You'll also know that we have launched the strategic SBRI Challenge Fund for small businesses, so that's to be very innovative about local businesses creating solutions. And the figure for that, I can't actually remember the right figure, I think it might be 500,000, but I'll confirm that for the member in writing in terms of the actual figure. But that's going to be for 2 challenges for small businesses to develop tools to improve the safety of women and girls at home or at work or at school. That's one area. And then the second will be around innovative methods to increase and improve physical and psychological safety of women and girls in all settings, and equipping people to identify and respond to potential violence. So I think that the funding will be very much targeted on that first 2-year plan, but we want to achieve more. We do want to achieve more funding. We said that this was just the start and we wanted to think, but I'll give you the breakdown in terms of the 3 areas of funding in writing in terms of the actual figures themselves.
Thank you, Minister. Can I just ask, because sometimes you have to look close to home in order to deal with some of these issues, could I have the Minister, if she's willing to speak to the Finance Minister, to have her look at the Northern Ireland Civil Service Staff Handbook to make sure it's changed to reflect the 6 outcomes you want from ending violence against women and girls?
Minister.
Well, very much the work that we're focused on is that whole of society approach, and it does start close to home. So if there are areas that require improvement within civil service, then we should do our own homework there. I don't know what's lacking in that regard, but I'm certainly happy to pick it up with the Minister to make sure that we are or do have the most effective handbook that we possibly can have for the service.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, what monitoring and oversight will you put in place in order to ensure delivery?
Minister.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Sorry. What monitoring and oversight will you put in place to ensure delivery at pace?
Thank you. So as the member knows, whenever we launched the plan last week, we talked about how we'll have an oversight board in place, and that oversight board has already been established, and they're going to oversee the full development and the implementation of the strategy. And I think that in itself is a mark of the seriousness in which we treat this subject, and also that it is a collective executive strategy, so something that we're all focused on working together. I can also say to you that the oversight board itself will be chaired at ministerial level, and as well as that, the board itself is going to be cross-sectoral and inclusive representation from across government, local government, also the community and voluntary sector themselves, and independent experts. And also we have governance in place, and we're going to monitor the impact of all of our actions, and that's been actually designed into the framework itself, so we'll be able to measure our success as we go. We'll be able to do more of what's better and do maybe less of things that perhaps aren't being as effective. So I'm pretty content that we have quite robust oversight and governance in place that allow us to be able to have the best possible strategy that we can have.
Timothy Gasson.
A few years ago, the now self-styled First Minister told BBC Radio Ulster, "It's not for me to say whether I believe her," in reference to the Maria Cahill case. Does she believe her now, or is she only the champion for cases of women when Republicans are not at fault?
Minister.
The question is in relation to our strategy to end violence against women and girls. All women, all girls, everyone out there in society deserves to live in a place that's free from gender-based harm. And that's the case whether you look backwards or you look forwards. But this strategy is about how we can design a better society going forward, how we can have prevention at the heart of it. And I am determined to work with all executive colleagues to make sure that this strategy is delivered in its fullness.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Sure.
Firstly, we'd like to mention that the other listed buildings on the Longcash site, Maze Longcash site as well, the World War II hangars occupied by the Ulster Aviation Society. The Ulster Aviation Society participated in the European Heritage Open Days on the 14th and the 15th of September and attracted 7,000 visitors to their collection. The Ulster Aviation Society collection is really a fantastic example of how listed buildings can be preserved and brought back into use. We also had the opportunity to meet with the board of the MLK Corporation in July, and also to hear their thinking on a roadmap for the future. We will discuss next steps with officials in due course. The future use of the listed and retained buildings will obviously form part of that wider discussion, and we've been very clear that we must build on the common ground that I think that we all share in terms of realising the potential of the site for the benefit of all. And we're absolutely committed to working with the corporation to achieve what we think is the huge potential in the site.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the First Minister for that update. Just wondering, is there any time frame for progress or when the site might be further developed, and in particular to make those controversial aspects of the previous plan not controversial?
I think we all, and I think when we've had a previous debate on this issue here in the Assembly, I think we've all collectively joined up and said that we want to maximise the potential from the site, that it can be a huge catalyst for economic development and growth, and very much aligned to our own programme for government in terms of economic growth. So I think we can do all of the above. I think that we can find a way to unleash the potential of the site, being sensitive to the listed buildings and making sure that we develop it as best as we possibly can. So we've had that initial meeting with the board. We intend to continue that engagement. We're talking to our own officials also. In terms of time frame, it's quite a large infrastructure and quite a large project. I don't think it's something that we'll turn over overnight, but certainly there's a political will in which to work together to develop the site, and certainly we are collectively, in terms of our own executive office, committed to ensuring that we can do that.
Cathal Boyle.
Garmag, Ceann Corlin, I thank the First Minister for her answers. Just, Minister, could I ask you, given the intention by ministers to make progress on our commitment to build on the common ground to realise the full potential of the site, could the First Minister outline next steps in moving forward?
Thank you for that. Earlier this year, we visited the Balmoral show, myself, the Deputy First Minister, the junior ministers, and we were back on site in July, where we actually had our full tour of the site again and met, as I said, with the corporation itself. And I think that was a good opportunity for us again to take stock and also to reflect the feeling from here, from the Assembly, from our recent debate, that we were committed to try to unleash the potential of the site, and also we wanted to talk to the board themselves around their thoughts around a roadmap for the development of the site. And I think, it's clear for us all to see, as I've just said, the entire site and the potential of it is clear for us all to see, and I think that the immense benefits that would bring for our local community and our local economy is not lost on anybody. So I think the scale of the investment is going to be so huge, but the cost of doing nothing will be much greater. It's something that we must tap into even, and it's an opportunity, I think, albeit challenging, but I think it's a huge opportunity for us, and I'm committed to working with the Deputy First Minister, with executive colleagues, and indeed all parties in this chamber to deliver on the potential of the site itself.
Honey Ford.
Mr. Speaker, just to ask the First Minister, has she had any discussions with Museums NI around the former prison buildings, and if so, can she give us an update on those discussions?
Minister.
So in terms of the Development Corporation itself, it seeks as far as possible to make sure that it's in a state of readiness for future development, and that also includes continuing to consider possible approaches to the regeneration of the site and a roadmap for the future. And in that context, the Corporation have held discussions with National Museums as recorded in the minutes of their board. I think that became public some time ago there. But we understand this is about how National Museums might be able to contribute based on their experience in working with historic and listed buildings. No firm proposals yet in connection with National Museums, but has been put for them for consideration, so no decisions have been made yet. But I think it's fair to say that in terms of its own due diligence, the Corporation is seeking to maintain that readiness. So whenever we do get to the point where we have actually a way forward, that at least they have advanced some of this work.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, in your answers to other members, you talked about the work that you and Deputy First Minister is doing and about looking at options. Have you any firm options actually on the table that you could tell the House about? And indeed, will those options also include or consider, make sure that it's considered rather that all of those things includes the whole of the community?
Yes, I think whenever we reflect on the site, what we're talking about is how can we benefit everybody? How can everybody in our local economy benefit from what could be a potential catalyst for investment and economic growth, for job creation, and for everything that whole site could open up. But we need to have a political agreement in terms of how we progress that. The board itself obviously will develop the plans. They will work their way through all the areas, and they set us out some, I suppose, more broader thinking in terms of where they're headed. But we don't have, I suppose, a T's crossed and an I's dotted plan at this stage. But suffice to say, there's a political will and a commitment in which to try to find a way that we can benefit everybody and we actually can realise the full potential of the site for everybody.
Declan McAleer.
Question for the
Minister.
So the public consultation opened on the 9th of September and it will run for 8 weeks. An equality consultation opened up on the same day and it will run for 12 weeks. Surveys are available on the Executive website, enabling people to provide feedback on the draft programme for government and also its accompanying impact assessments. In addition, in-person and online events have been scheduled to enable people to find out more about the process. Further details on these events are available on the Executive website. And also, in addition to these, we will continue to explore opportunities to engage with sectoral partners to gauge their thoughts on the document itself.
McAleer.
I thank the Minister for her response, and I also want to thank her for attending the prize given in Dean McGurk College, Carrickmore on Thursday evening. Does the Minister agree that regional balance is a core component of the programme for government?
First Minister.
Thank you, and thank you to yourself and to the school for the invite to come on Thursday night. I put a big premium on investing in our young people, and it certainly was a very positive event and great to be there and to be part of the awards ceremony for all the amazing young people. I mean, I think 100% in terms of regional balance, and I think that this new executive has very much focused on the issue of regional balance. And I do think that, and even the previous question around how can the MLK site, how can that be to the benefit of everybody? And I think that's crucially important. We must share prosperity. We must share that benefit that can be found from investment. So in terms of strengthening our local economy, supporting our local businesses, investing in infrastructure, that has to be felt fairly right across the north, and delivering regional balance is core to the intent and to the envision the vision and ambition even that underpins the programme for government itself. And that really does mean targeting resources and locating services where there are clear deficits, but it also means better connecting people to their public services, to employment and to educational opportunities. And delivering these objectives means that we need to make the right investments at the right place at the right time, and of course that's going to be challenging, but we're dealing with a lot of legacy of historic underfunding in public services here, and we know that. But I'm convinced that whenever we work together we can overcome these challenges and we can ensure that there is a fair share spread right across the piece in terms of everybody feeling that they are invested in and that this executive is committed to that regional balance piece.
McReynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the First Minister outline what focus their department intends to give the work on flags, identity, culture and tradition in relation to the programme for government?
Minister.
That's a separate area of work to the programme for government itself, insofar it's work that's already being completed. You know that there was consensus in some areas and not on others, but now we are looking for the FICT report to be wrapped up in the wider review of TBUC, so that's going to be important. I think that we can maybe perhaps find a way to drive forward on the areas where we agree, wrap it up with TBUC, for example, and what that might look like. And the member will know that there might be areas where there will not be political agreement on, and then there may be a role for this Assembly in terms of how perhaps some of the areas will be taken forward.
I call Patsy Midlone.
Minister, I was glad to hear you referring earlier there to prosperity. But in your consultation, can you advise if you have yet engaged with anti-poverty campaigners? Because the lack of a mention of the anti-poverty strategy came certainly as a blow to many in that sector, but more importantly, as a blow to many others who are actually suffering from poverty.
Minister.
Of course, and I just said in my previous answer, I think it's important that everybody feels prosperity and everybody feels invested in. So I absolutely concur with you that we need to see the anti-poverty strategy published and we need to see it put into action. And I commend the Department for Communities to take that forward and actually get it published and actually let's see that action. People are struggling right now. We know the cost of living is being so challenging for people. The winter fuel payment decision taken in London actually compounds that problem for a lot of older people. So we now need to see the publication of the strategies. The document itself, the programme for government, does talk about the inclusion strategies, but we need to see them now published, and I am certainly committed to that, ensure the members' desire that that would be published.
Mark Durgan. Minister.
TEO funded the extension and refurbishment of the Gas Yard Centre, directly impacting the centre's ability to meet the community needs, and they now employ 19 staff directly and approximately 50 staff indirectly to ensure that the community have access to support services within the local area. With an array of projects on offer throughout the calendar year, the Peacemakers Museum hosted within the centre was funded solely through the National Lottery Heritage Fund. An internal review was carried out under the Raising Concerns policy. The outcome of the internal review was independently reviewed by Group Internal Audit and Fraud Investigation Services. The conclusion to both reviews was that there was no breach of the capital process regarding Gas Yard Development Trust's proposal.
Mr. Durkan.
Would the First Minister agree that the use of John Hume's name and image to promote a project, despite his wife, Pat, and the Hume family expressing their opposition to it, was and is wrong? And what lessons have been learned by the Executive Office over this matter?
I can assure the member that I'm absolutely delighted that our department was actually involved in funding and supporting the extension and the refurbishment of the Gas Yard Centre, and I just referred to the employment that it created and what it means in terms of the local area and the community having access to support services in the area. I think that's a fabulous thing, and we stand over that and we're very proud of that. In terms of the Peacemakers Museum, TAO don't provide any direct funding for that, and therefore it's an issue between both the family and the museum themselves.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, there's no doubt that the Peacemakers Museum has proven to be divisive, not least amongst the nationalist community. There's no doubt as well that lessons need to be learned from the department as to how these types of projects are handled. What lessons does the Minister think that can be learned as a result of what has happened in relation to the Peacemakers Museum?
Yeah, I think that, again, I remind the member that TEO weren't involved in funding the museum itself. We obviously the Gasworks, which is different, and we're proud of that investment. But in terms of the museum itself, it's clearly there has been a lot of public commentary around that, And whilst we are not responsible for the content, we did have, TEO did contract Ulster University to provide some sort of additional assurance on the information that was shared within the content steering group and the development of the museum narrative. And University of Ulster and National Lottery Heritage Fund confirmed that they were content that this had been met prior to construction works commencing. So just to say that, I mean, I think that like all of these things, they're much better tried to be resolved in a conversation as opposed to perhaps sometimes megaphone diplomacy.
Michelle Guy.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask the First Minister to detail what steps are planned for the remainder of the mandate to recognise those who have made a contribution to peace in Northern Ireland?
Not exactly related to the question, but there are a number of events that will happen. I know that myself and the Deputy First Minister have been invited to a number of events around celebrating 26 years now of the Good Friday Agreement. We're having a number of different events. Perhaps it'd be better to write to you just to note whatever it is that we have. But look, I think we should be very proud of those people that stepped forward and created the peace and created the conditions for peace. I think we should, as we did for the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, we reflected on all that in terms of what was achieved and that those people that stepped forward and got us to the point where we had the Good Friday Agreement and how grateful we are for that. And our job as political leaders of today is to keep building for the future, to keep building towards the next 25 years and how we can lift everybody up in society and how we can have an inclusive society, because we're living in an ever-changing place, a much more diverse place, and I want us to live in a society that's fair, that is very welcoming, that is very inclusive, and I know that that's why everybody in this chamber is elected to also do that too.
Philip McGuigan. Minister.
The appointment of a new Commissioner for Victims and Survivors is essential to inform the development of policies and to help ensure the longer-term needs of victims and survivors are represented by a strong, independent voice. We are keen that a new Commissioner is appointed as soon as possible, and as such we are pleased to inform the Chamber that we have instructed our officials in the Executive Office to formally proceed with the appointment process. Officials are now at an advanced stage with the preparations required for the recruitment competition, and we anticipate that it will be formally launched in the autumn. We would also remind members that this appointment process is regulated by the Commissioner for Public Appointments, and it's estimated that the process may take a number of months.
I thank the First Minister for the response and the movement on the appointment process of a new Victims and Survivors Commissioner. And recognising the key role that Commissioners play here in our model of government, can I ask the First Minister to indicate what stage the recruitment competitions are now at to appoint Commissioners under the Identity and Language Act?
Minister.
Well, I can say that we have made initial decisions in respect of the appointments process, so we've been able to make some progress there, and officials are now working to provide further advice to Ministers, which will include information documents for each of the competitions, as well as details of selection panels. The development of this competition documentation is at an advanced stage, and officials are also finalising the selection panels for the competitions themselves. So once these are agreed, the competition initiation meeting needs to be conducted for each of the competitions, which will allow officials to provide finalised paperwork for Ministers. So subject to that agreement, then this competition process can be launched, and I hope that that is in the immediate period ahead.
Stephen Dunn.
Securing help for victims and survivors in a timely and sensitive manner is rightly a priority and very much should be. Will the First Minister outline what measures are being taken to ensure that this is the case, and would she agree that all families should be treated equally and entitled to the same access to justice, rather than a hierarchy of victims, which many feel has been undertaken in recent weeks?
Minister.
Well, firstly, let me say that the Victims Payments Board is working closely with victims groups to keep the scheme under review and to look for ways to improve the throughput of cases, because I know a number of members have been raising concerns in terms of some individuals and the fact that they've been in the system for so long, and really it's quite a distressing time for anybody going through that process. So just to assure the member that when it comes to trying to speed up the process, that we are looking at all areas, including a review of operational effectiveness and performance. We're exploring improvements to the overall victim journey through the assessment process. We are doing workshops with victims groups on improving the process, and we're also working with NIJAC to bring the board up to full complement. In a more general sense, I think that it's important that we support all families to get access to truth and justice. I think it's important that And we can see from the court ruling on Friday that the intention of this Labour government to go down the route with the ICRIR is not commanding support from both the victims and survivor community or human rights organisations, and now the courts also find it to be completely fundamentally flawed. So what we need to do is find a way for all families to get access to truth and justice. What we need to do is find a way to help people to heal, and that's different for all different families. We had that once with the Stormont House Agreement. We need to get back to that point again. Can I commend the Finucane family, because I think that's what you're referencing. The Finucane family have been campaigning for over 3 decades to get access to truth and justice. They were due that public inquiry. They have been let down at every turn by successive British governments, and I commend Geraldine Finucane for her bravery and her courage to keep going for all of these years. And what I want for the Finucane family, I want for every family.
Kate Nicholl.
Please.
Since assuming responsibility for the coordination and engagement functions of the previous Strategic Migration Partnership, the Executive Office has worked in conjunction with partners to support asylum seekers and refugees and their integration into the community. This involves officials engaging with the relevant agencies to consider often challenging asylum and resettlement policies and represent local interests to Home Office on policy plans and implementation. Examples of that have included on room sharing policies in asylum accommodation. Following the recent unrest, officials set up across sectoral meetings with statutory bodies and voluntary partners and the Home Office, ensuring key information was shared. A further element of our Strategic Migration Partnership work has focused on building a picture of community cohesion and service availability in a number of local locations. Phase 1 has been completed and it's being used by the Home Office to inform asylum dispersal here. In a similar vein, officials led a multi-agency working group to address move-on pressures and to help facilitate the transition for those gaining immigration status to live here. We will continue to work closely with our cross-sector partners to build on these successes and also to further strengthen engagement and communication in this area.
Ms Nicholl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, First Minister, for your answer. I recently learnt that children in contingency accommodation will no longer be able to go to school until they're in permanent accommodation. Some of these children that I'm working with have been in hotels for up to 2 years. I am very worried that there is going to be an inquiry at some stage into the treatment of these children. There are some who are malnourished, have poor mental health, and now to not be able to go to school, I think, is deeply concerning. What assurances can you give me that your department is going to do everything it can to ensure the well-being of some of the most vulnerable children in our society?
Minister.
Thank you, and I can give you an assurance that we certainly will do everything that we can, and where any particular issues arise, we would always want to know about that so that we can respond appropriately. And I know in terms of access to school places for asylum-seeking children, the Education Authority are no longer going to intervene to support them to secure a school place in that initial 4-week period because of fear of them moving on and then the children being moved from school to school, and perhaps there's a challenge there. But I think it's just important that we're sensitive to all of these things, that we get it right. And if the member has any particular areas of concern or perhaps maybe would like to talk to me, I'm more than happy to hear that, because we've been advised by EA, by the Education Authority, that in these types of accommodation for a short period of time it would cause unnecessary disruption to families. So I think we just have to be careful and just work our way through this as best we can. But if there's any in particular cases that you'd like to raise, I'm more than happy to hear from you.
Declan Kearney.
On the 8th of August last, the Assembly was recalled, and we issued a very strong message that we stood firmly against racist violence, intimidation and threat. Would the First Minister agree with me that we need a political and a legislative zero tolerance against all forms of hate crime?
Less than a minute.
Yes, thank you for that, and absolutely concur that the racism, the violence, what we saw in terms of intimidation, all of that on our streets in recent months is a challenge to each and every one of us who want to build a shared society here and a better future, and to have a society that has the value of equality and respect at its heart. And we as an elected body also need to have that approach to promote and uphold that. And I think that we can never and will never lose sight of, I suppose, the damaging and lasting impact of this type of activity that we saw over the these crimes that we have witnessed in terms of victims and their families and our communities. It's harrowing to watch and not acceptable. So I think the zero approach, the zero tolerance approach of message that we sent out over the summer is vitally important, and we need to keep driving that home. We're not going to accept this here in this place we call home. We say no to intolerance and we say no to hatred, and I think that we have to do everything that we can to ensure that those people that have made here their home, those people that have been born here, that the richness that their diversity brings is something that we should celebrate and something that we very much want to have in our community.
Topical questions. I call Sinead McLaughlin.
First Minister, I am sure that you will have heard and welcomed the DUP leader's media interview this morning, in which he commits that his party will not collapse these institutions during this mandate. Would you also like to give the same unequivocal commitment to this House today?
First Minister.
I've always been clear that I'm here because I want to be. I'm here because I want to govern. I'm here in the executive, leading the executive, developing a programme for government, bringing forward strategies, trying to make people's lives better. I'm fully committed to making the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement work, including the executive and the Assembly.
Sinead McLaughlin.
Thank you, Minister. I was looking for a yes answer only. But, Minister, you have previously said that you are up for reform of these institutions. Are you aware of any of the work that the Assembly and Executive Review Committee is doing on this issue, or is it just all oral fudge?
First Minister.
Perhaps the member isn't sure, but the Assembly and Executive Review Committee, the job of that committee is actually to look at the functioning of these institutions, how it works, can we improve it, can we do better, can we reform. My team are there participating with all of the other parties in terms of bringing forward ideas, trying to progress areas where we can strengthen how we do business. We're always have been up for that and will continue to be in the committee.
Diane Forsyth.
Mr Speaker, and I thank the First Minister for her answers so far. Next month, the Prime Minister will host a major international investment summit in London, advancing opportunities for investment and growth across the UK. Will the First Minister and Deputy First Minister be there to showcase Northern Ireland?
First Minister.
Yes, I believe we got an invitation towards the end of last week. So when we met with the Chancellor last week, this was one of the areas that we discussed. So we think that we have a unique selling point now. We need to make sure that we maximise that we're going to grow our economy. We take every avenue and every opportunity that's open to us. So I think they're just trying to settle on a date for when that might be.
Ms Forsyth.
Thank you very much for that answer. And would the First Minister agree with me that Northern Ireland has a number of key sectors where we punch well above our weight, not least the aerospace industry, which is a significant employer in my constituency? And I ask, what will the key message be to investors about why they should choose this part of the United Kingdom to invest in?
It's a very simple message, and it's one that we've delivered since we've come into office. We are open for business. That message resonates with people. It's important that we give that message of political stability, that we have a plan to grow our economy, that we have plans in terms of to really showcase the strengths that we have here. And we have a lot of strengths and things to be proud of. The aerospace industry, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, we're so strong in quite a number of areas. So our message will certainly be one of that we're very much open for business, and that we have access to both markets, which we must now exploit to the benefit of all the people that we collectively represent.
Shell Guy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the First Minister confirm that the latest business plan developed by the Mays Long Cash Corporation has been approved and will be published?
Sir.
I am not sure that has come before me on my desk, but I will check it out and let the member know.
Okay.
Thank you, First Minister. In previous answers, you have noted that the corporation were developing options for ministers to approve. For a project as long-standing as this, we do need timelines and next steps. So can you outline when these proposals will be with you and what these next steps are?
Minister.
It's very much for the board to develop the plans. I mean, that's their remit. I mean, they come together as a corporation. So they previously had plans, but obviously just given the political nature around the site itself, it hasn't progressed. But let's now hope that we're in a different space and in a spot where actually we can advance those plans. So we've had that initial conversation with the board, and they talked at a very high level around some of the areas that they think that they are potential in. But in terms of the actual detailed plans. I mean, I think there's a lot more work to be done there. You know, the road into the site, for example. You have to have a political agreement in the first instance in which to get the site opened up, but that's what I want us to achieve. I want us to find a way that allows us all to be able to maximise the site for the good of everybody. We protect the listed buildings. We find a way to find a political agreement that allows this huge opportunity to be opened up, and sure, the prize in that will be job creation, money in people's pockets, economic growth. These are all things that we all strive towards.
Declan Kearney.
I note the remarks by the British Prime Minister last week about Casement Park. Do you agree that building a first-class stadium for Gaelic games, and in particular for the benefit of Antrim and Ulster Gaels, should now proceed as a matter of urgency?
First Minister.
Yes, I do, and I think that last Friday, when the British Government made a number of announcements that were not in the interests of the people here, was a very poor start to any kind of reset that this new government wants to have with us, so they need to do better. But certainly on the issue of Casement Park must be built. It is a flagship executive project, and it's something that both governments have, both the British Government and the Irish Government have committed to. We know what the quantum of funding is available from the Irish Government. We know what our executive has set aside. But we now need to see the British Government fulfil its commitment if they want to be a partner. And I hope that they will be a partner in terms of getting Casement built, because the economic potential that comes from being able to, again, invest in this site, the state-of-the-art facilities that it will mean for Gaelic games, what it means in terms of the local economy and job creation. We need to just push forward and get this done. It's gone on for far too long, and now's the time just to, the Euros, unfortunately, has passed us by because of inaction. And I think that now we're in a scenario where we just must move forward and get Casement built.
Mr. Kearney.
Máigad ceann cóirle agus go buíochas leis an chéadara a socht an freagra sin. Agus an ábhar Céarna, do you concur, First Minister, that the building of Casement Park will be hugely beneficial, not only for the provision of other sporting events which could be hosted in Casement Park once developed, but also will act as a spur for significant investment here into the north, and also for the generation of much needed, good, solid, well-paid employment?
Minister.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the economic benefits speak for themselves. So we just need to get on and get the stadium built now. And you know, it is much wider. It'd be to the huge benefit of West Belfast in terms of that local economy, but even it's much wider than that in terms of what the construction of Casement Park will do, and you know what it means for Gaels, what it means for job creation, what it means for growing our economy is quite significant, and we just must now move on and get it done. And I am determined to make sure that that is the case.
Trevor Clark.
Speaker, in the King's speech this year, reference was made to the setting up of the Council of Regions and Nations, and I suppose that was left for the Prime Minister. Has anything moved in relation to that, to all of the regions of the UK and participation in that?
Minister.
We, I think, have just been given an exploratory date, actually, so I think they are trying to put it together, but nothing's confirmed yet, but they do seem to be proceeding with actually setting this up.
Mr. Clark.
And given that they've set an exploratory date, I presume you will be welcoming that with open arms. But do you know, in relation to the Council of Regions, what particular work or what format that will take, or what interests or what will be on the table in terms of discussions?
So, no, we don't have any kind of in-depth detail, but of course I participate in all bodies and all of these groups. There are quite a lot of them right now, but I will continue to participate where I believe that it will lead to the betterment of the people here. So, we know on a highbrow what's been suggested, but we don't have the actual detail of actually what an agenda would look like and where we would participate or how we participate in it. But certainly we will be attending whenever it's arrived at, the date is settled.
Declan McAleer.
Does the First Minister agree that the pay settlement reached for education support staff is a welcome development?
Yes, I do think it's very good news that for the teaching staff, for the support staff, that we have been able to get to the point where an agreement has been reached in terms of a fair wage. And I think, again, this comes down to that old adage where we get more done whenever we work together. So I do commend both the Finance and the Education Ministers for the work that they did together constructively find a resolution to this matter. And we know that the action was going on for a very long time, and all credit to the support staff in our schools and our teachers who worked together to try to achieve what they did in the end, and I commend them for that, because they do deserve to have fair pay and good working conditions. So I just want to commend that approach in terms of the two ministers working together, but also the education and support staff themselves.
Margaret, thanks the Minister for her response. Minister, given that the Magee University Task Force report has now been published, would you agree that the expansion of Magee University is vital for the North West in terms of increasing student numbers and boosting the economy?
Minister.
Yes, I very much welcome the publication of the task force last week, and I think the task force itself, spearheaded by Stephen Kelly, was one of the first things that our Economy Minister, Conor Murphy, established whenever he took up office. And I think that the delivering of 10,000 students at Magee is an executive priority, and one which we're all determined to deliver on as part of our work to promote regional balance. So I think that's a really strong sign of intent. It also demonstrates that progress is being made, and I really think it is a real exciting opportunity to further establish the North West as a vibrant place to live and to study. And I think if we work together with all partners, we will deliver a first-class university in the region.
Brian Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, the First Minister may be aware that youths from Ardoyne have been causing sectarian nuisance over the last 4 days at Hillview Retail Park and in that part of North Belfast, including entering Tennant Street and Canberra Street, and tools that they were carrying have been recovered by the police. This has also resulted in security gates on both sides of the community having to be closed early by the police. Does the First Minister agree with me that in the interest of good relations, everyone within the community should be using their influence to bring this behaviour to an end so that people and shoppers can live in peace?
First Minister.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not aware of the ins and outs of that, but just to say, obviously, that all those, particularly those who work in interface areas or who work in the local communities, need to work together to ensure that where perhaps our young people are being distracted until areas such as this, that we can perhaps take them in a different path. And I think I would definitely commend a lot of the good work that is done across community groups and those people on the ground working with young people day and daily. But certainly I hope that it doesn't become a constant feature, and I hope that perhaps there's a way to try to find a resolution to what's happening.
Mr. Kingston.
Just given that this has now, it's the 4th day, yesterday it was that this continuing, just that the First Minister makes a point, can't be just left as a matter for the police, elected representatives, youth workers, interface workers and residents and community workers all have a role to play in ending this, as she has said.
First Minister.
Yeah, yes, and certainly if anything in TO can be done to assist, then we're more than happy. But I think that the general point of all of us in political leadership trying to use our influence in things like this is very, very important, and usually finds a better solution whenever it comes organically from the ground.
Ciara Ferguson.
A great day last Wednesday when we had the First Minister, Deputy First Minister and our Finance Minister in the city to sign off the growth deal. Could I ask the First Minister, would you agree that the growth deal signed off last week for Derry and Strabane will be an economic game changer for the region?
First Minister.
Yes, I thought it was a fantastic event last week to be able to be there, to be part of the signing of the growth deal, particularly given the negative publicity around the growth deals in the days previous to that. But I was delighted and didn't want the event to be overshadowed by the negativity, because obviously we've got work to do in terms of fighting for the Mid-South West and the Causeway Coast and Glens deals, which we collectively are determined to do. But no doubt the £290 million investment for the Derry City and Strabane growth deal marks just another huge milestone for the North West. It's going to be transformative in terms of job creation, infrastructure, education, tourism projects, investment in our communities. And I believe that the potential of every city, town and community right across the area that it covers is going to create just such huge opportunities for the North West in general. And I think when you combine it with the work that's been done around the Magee Task Force, when you combine it with the work that's been done around regional balance, I think you can see that this is a game changer in terms of the collective effort to ensure that there's proper regional balance in the North West.
Now move to questions to Minister for the Economy, and I call John Stewart. Minister.